For York Southwestern, I apologize. And I would just like to advise all members that we've now reached the point of interventions lasting no more than 10 minutes, followed by questions and comments of 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to speak on Bill S-5, which is titled An Act to Amend the Law Governing Financial Institutions to Provide for Related and Consequential Matters, and to express my disappointment in the inadequacies of this bill. The member opposite suggested that somehow we were against this kind of thing. We're not against it. We are, in fact, disappointed that it does not go far enough. And I think we've heard that mantra over and over and over again throughout this entire Parliament, that we are disappointed that that government does not do enough, that does not protect seniors, that it does not protect immigrants, that it does not protect the rights of ordinary Canadians. And again, we are faced with a bill that doesn't seem to go far enough. It's our hope that those adequacies can be addressed at committee, as has been suggested, but so far we've not had a good track record with changing bills at committee. And unfortunately, the government doesn't like to listen to our advice, doesn't want to hear debate, intends through the time allocation motion it introduced yesterday and passed today to have only one further day of debate before going to the standing committee, which will then have about 5 weeks to go through this very complicated bill. And I say complicated because the bill amends the Bank Act, the Cooperative Credit Associations Act, the Insurance Companies Act, the Trust and Loan Companies Act, the Bank of Canada Act, the Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation Act, the Canadian Payments Act, the Winding Up and Restructuring Act, the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions Act, the Payment Clearing and Settlement Act, and the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada Act. So why are we rushing? This is a pretty important thing. I don't think there's an individual in Canada that isn't somehow touched by this bill in their relationship with banks and financial institutions. There are a few in my riding that don't have bank accounts, I'll admit, but as the member for Winnipeg Centre reminded us, they're being served by that other gouging institution, the payday loans corporations, which have sprung up, as he says, like mushrooms to replace the banks that have left. It's very unfortunate that we're not going to get enough time to debate, because it's going to deprive Canadians of a real, comprehensive, transparent review of our financial system, and which is unlike the cursory and rushed treatment this bill unfortunately received in that other house, the Senate. We are talking about regulating this country's financial service industry, which employs thousands of Canadians and handles trillions of dollars in assets, and the Senate review of this legislation took 3 weeks from start to finish. The bill was introduced in the Senate on November 23rd of last year, adopted at final reading on December 16th. So 3 questions arise from that. Why did it take so long to get here? We're now in the middle of February, and we're now dealing with it in a rush because we have to pass a time allocation motion. Almost 3 months since it was introduced, 2 months since it was passed in the Senate. Is the banking system therefore less important to Canadians than guns? Is the banking system less important than copyright legislation? Is the banking system less important than the wheat board? These are all things that went before. And the banking system is not as important to ordinary Canadians. We disagree. Why the Senate? Is the government trying to make work over there in the other chamber? Is that really what's going on, to justify their position that the Senate is a effective and sober second thought place? So they've got to find ways to introduce motions in the Senate in order to bills, actual government bills in the Senate, in order to give them work to do. And if this is so urgent, why did the government wait so long to introduce it even in the Senate? The deadline's been known for years. The deadline was always going to be the middle of April of this year. So what's taken so long? It baffles us. We certainly have time to do this right. We should have had time to do this right. But the government's mismanagement of this file, as the 5-year review was well known, has contributed to this rush process whereby the government invokes closure for the umpteenth time and limits our job as parliamentarians to do a proper review of this important sector. It's as if the government is governing on the back of a napkin. Every time we turn around, there's something they forgot about, something they forgot to do. And this is another one. They forgot about this. Oh, we better get it, hurry. We got to get it through. We owe it to Canadians to address some of the real problems in the financial institution, like protecting consumers from excessive user fees. Not only ATM fees, but remittance fees on transfers that many new Canadians in the diaspora send to families they are supporting back home. Those remittance fees are huge, and they are charged by banks and other financial corporations alike, sometimes as much as 30, 40, and even 50% of the money they send overseas. And why do they have to send money overseas? It's because their families can't be reunified here in Canada. We now have as many as 106 months of wait between the time an application is made and a parent or grandparent can be permitted to come back to Canada, and as much as 33 months for spouses and children. And all the while, the person here who has recently immigrated to Canada and is trying to reunite with their family is trying to support their family overseas, working in Canada and sending what little money they can. And when the banks, the financial institutions, the payday lenders, whoever, take 30, 40, 50% of that money, it is a crime, and it's not something that this government has addressed. We need to review the treatment of financial derivatives. Nothing in this legislation talks about that. In particular, speculation, which we saw in the United States in particular, provoked the financial crisis from which we are still recovering. These practices do not contribute to the economy and contribute to financial volatility that threatens to destabilize economies, and yet there's nothing in this bill to deal with that. The housing bubble in the U.S. that was created by those derivatives and is still burst has ordinary citizens there have lost billions of dollars in the values of their properties, in large measure as a result of banks and other institutions trading and speculating, and Canadian banks were not immune from this. Canadian banks lost money on these derivatives. We need to review mortgage lending practices, particularly in light of the comments made by the Bank of Canada Governor, Mark Carney, who said that record consumer debts are the greatest domestic threat to the country's financial institutions. Right now, consumer debt is 151% of disposable income, which is partly the result of aggressive home equity loan marketing, placing Canadians in vulnerable situations should interest rates rise. If interest rates rise, we're in for a huge collapse in our credit system in Canada. We don't want to see the disastrous practices that we've seen in the United States in their housing portfolio come here to Canada. This is an inadequate measure, a missed opportunity to do better for Canadians. And the consultation process has been pathetic, to say the least. Apparently, there were some consultations conducted by the government online, and some 30 people found out about it and submitted recommendations. And most of those, the government can't release to anybody because they forgot to get the required disclosures from those individuals about their information being released. So we'll never know what the feedback to the government was. We, on our side, will support this bill at second reading because we hope that the deficiencies in this bill can be corrected in committee. We hope that this government, some have actually said they want to, listen and make amendments where necessary to this bill at committee. Our record so far has been, I can't remember one of the bills that have come through here so far having any amendments that have gone through committee. Maybe this will be the first. Who knows? I hope my colleagues on the government side will participate in the committee review of this bill in good faith, so to improve how our financial sector can better serve Canadians. This will be a challenge given the time constraints imposed by the government today, but we owe Canadians this effort. I owe the Canadians in my riding, as does every single member of Parliament here who represents all the Canadians, all of whom are touched by the measures that the government has put forward today in this bill. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions et commentaires.